Today, headlines of rapid evolution pop up all the time and are wielded by Bible skeptics and online visitors to our comment sections constantly as undeniable proof of the story of evolution. However, when you dig just a little deeper, all these examples fail spectacularly as to what evolutionists need to demonstrate. For those who can appreciate slapstick comedy alongside some rapid-fire dialogue, the classic 1953 comedy routine, Who's on First, performed by the famous Abbott and Costello, stands out as a brilliant performance that's stood the test of time. The entire premise of the skit lies in the confusion that arises because of the lack of understanding of the definition of terms being used between the two of them while discussing a baseball game. Abbott tries to explain to Costello the last names of the players on the baseball team, who, what, and I don't know. Costello is confounded by the switch-up of the words being used in their natural sense, as questions and/or declarations rather than the supposed proper names of the fictional players.
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yeah.
And it all gets very amusing and confusing when they discuss who is on first, what is on second, and I don't know is on third base, all with a blisteringly fast delivery that showcases their comedic intelligence quite dynamically. Of course, as amusing as the confusion is when watching the comedy routine, in real-life situations, especially when dealing with important issues, talking past one another because of a lack of definition in terms is often very frustrating and detrimental to building understanding between different parties. And this is very common amongst creationists and evolutionists discussing the origins debate, especially when biblical creationists use the English translation of the Hebrew word min, which means kind, when describing animal kinds, alongside modern terms like genus and species, etc. And what do I mean by that? Well, biblical creationists believe what the book of Genesis clearly reveals, that God created distinct kinds of animals to reproduce after their own kind, and use terminology, such as the term baramin, that reflects this belief. The word baramin comes from two Hebrew words, bara meaning created and min meaning kind. So baramin literally means created kind. And the study of the biblical animal kinds is called baraminology. The idea of animals reproducing after their kind connotes the idea that in a plain sense, as examples, the dog kind will only reproduce and make more dogs. And when the cat or the elephant or whale kind produce offspring, they will only result in more cats or elephants or whales, respectively, etc. Biblical creationists don't believe that one kind of creature will ever evolve into another, no matter how long they might reproduce. However, this leads to the question, what exactly is a kind? Because we see a tremendous amount of variety in just the cat or dog types, for example. How do we explain where lions and tigers and tabby cats, along with wolves and foxes and French poodles come from, let alone the incredible variety of all the other plants and animals we see, if God created individual kinds in the beginning? Wouldn't all that variety coming about support the story of evolution rather than the idea of some manner of fixity between different sorts of animals? Well, no, because by our modern classification system, a baramin would most likely fit at the family level. And in case it's been a while since you took high school science, you might remember the classification system is based on similarities in obvious physical traits in creatures and consists of a hierarchy of taxa, from the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, down to the species. So, for example, most creation scientists would assume that Noah didn't need to have pairs of coyotes or foxes or dingoes or dachshunds and a large number of other present-day species representative of the dog kind, which fall under the family classification Canidae, but rather a pair of creatures on board which contained the genetic diversity to account for all these species on board Noah's Ark. Interestingly, there are around 500 dog breeds around the world. And amazingly, the vast majority of these dog breeds are less than 500 years old. And most of them are fewer than 150 years old. And evolutionists have admitted that all modern dog breeds have been bred from wolves, which means wolves are likely very similar to the parent dog kind that Noah took aboard and then exited from the ark after the Genesis flood. The origin of the domestic dog from wolves has been established, suggesting a common origin from a single gene pool for all dog populations. Just this example alone begs the question: how can simply breeding dogs cause us to see genetic changes that produce so many dog varieties in such a short time? Well, there are really only two possible explanations for the elegantly complex programmed genetic systems we observe in nature. The vast majority of variation in kinds of animals has either come about through the slow addition of novel individual traits over millions of years, and this is what the story of evolution professes, or either through the divvying up and expression of subsets of pre-existing genetic information that was front-loaded into the genomes of all the different kinds of creatures God made in the beginning. And this is what biblical creationists believe. And everything we've observed in science supports that idea, such as the example of the variety of dog types from wolves demonstrates. Interestingly, National Geographic made our point for us in an article discussing the supposed evolution of dogs when they said, "Genetic studies show that dogs evolved from wolves and remain as similar to the creatures from which they came as humans with different physical characteristics are to each other, which is to say, not much difference at all." Well, if we took random samples of people from Europe, Asia, North and South America, or Africa, despite any genetic differences, they would all be considered people, human beings. And if we take various dog types from all around the world, they're all still dogs. So all we've ever observed scientifically is exactly what the Bible says. The various kinds of creatures we study around the world reproduce according to their kinds.